Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals.
That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. Chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Good morning. Welcome to the Northland Sports Page. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. It is Saturday. Welcome back to the radio, Vikings fans. I apologize for what you just went through on In the Zone, or was that Packer preview, or was that Packer worship hour, or what was that?
Yeah, no doubt, right? If we're trying to convince Double T that everything that goes good for the rest of the world is just not going to work here. You know, boy, Sam Darnold sucks.
Double T was a saint during that last 45 minutes or so.
Sam Darnold sucks. Doesn't everybody know that J.J. McCarthy's left-handed? You know, your running backs don't have any feet. Your coach is struggling. Your GM hasn't yet figured the game out because he was a stockbroker once.
Right.
Like, everything is just like, you don't understand it, Double T. Egan is being annexed. It's the whole Vikings thing is bad.
It was very interesting because to each their own, sports opinions are what makes sports radio fun. But during the last 45 minutes of the show in front of us, basically we heard Packer perfection, and the Vikings pretty much shouldn't show up this season. But again, opinions, that's what it's all about. We're certainly going to have ours, and we get the fact that the Packers certainly have more championship pedigree than the Minnesota Vikings do. But when it comes to Minnesota, I want to start with this, Dave Cook, because Duluth, in the sport of football, albeit a little bit different, could have championship pedigree in just a handful of hours.
Yeah, no doubt, right? The Harbor Monsters are getting ready to tip off here in a couple of hours, and we've had a chance in the past 3 months to get to know the team. We've gotten really close to the head coach. We've got to know the GM. We've got to know the owner. We've got to know the quarterback. We've gotten to meet the guys when they've come in the middle of the season. And this is a really good group of guys. Not just talented, not just experienced, not just fast, not just physical, but a genuinely good group of guys that the town should definitely get behind.
No doubt about it. They've had a winning attitude and a winning presence all season long.
Presence. That's
it's
a great word.
Time to do winning again and just hoist the trophy. I don't know if there is one for Arena Mania, but we've already talked about getting fitted for rings. Hopefully they're going to be doing that.
I just think you hit it on the head. The thing that the Harbor Monsters have more than anything else is a presence. They have a championship winning presence.
I'm glad you mentioned that because our presence in this studio is going to go for a while. This show goes till noon, then Monster Weekend kickoff noon to 1. Championship edition. The guys, they're excited. You're going to hear from Terrence Wenzel. You're going to hear from KJ Felder. And you're going to hear from the coach, Tony O'Neill. Duluth is abuzz with sports success because shout out to the Duluth Huskies
Absolutely.
as well. They are playoff bound thanks to last night. You know, we've talked about Duluth teams financially not succeeding, and we'll see if that changes because winning fixes a lot of things. That might do it.
Yeah, no doubt, Brian. And again, let's tip our hats to the Huskies. They haven't done much since you and I left, right?
Those are not related, by the way.
No. But it's been a few lean years. I mean, the last year we were there, they were pretty good. But now to see them come back and fight and claw and get to the playoffs on a special night, right? The ability to do that in that league with that many grinding games, because that's the thing people don't remember about Northwoods League. It
72 big ones.
Grind.
Yeah.
For them to get there, I mean, that's heck of a hat tip for them.
And you know how excited that is. We know how exciting that can be in terms of announcing for the team.
Yeah.
Shout out to Brian Tim, who's been on the show a couple of
Absolutely.
times. He's their public address announcer. He also looped us in to our newest sponsor. The sponsorship family here on NSP, the Northland Sports Page, keeps growing. Welcome to our newest one, and Brian Tim helped connect us as well.
Oh, 100%. Ferguson, Bath and Kitchen. Brian, I think I've told you this, but maybe not. So a couple weeks ago, July 4th week, Jenny, my sister from Alaska, and her husband Jason came down, and they were marveling at our faucet. Like they were talking about how in Alaska,
which those are words you just don't hear anymore.
Our kitchen looks pretty good.
Yeah.
And the faucet, of course, we got from Ferguson, and because that's where you get solid quality, first rate stuff. You get it at Ferguson. And so they were like, "Oh, this is cool. How about that? How does this work? How does that work?" And I said, "I think maybe during the week we probably need to bring you to Ferguson." Because you gotta see this stuff, I guess, because you're shopping in the wrong place. It would cost too much to ship, which is probably true, but the idea that if you're, refurbing a kitchen, you need a new faucet, you need, new work stuff in the bathroom, make stuff look right, head up to Ferguson.
Absolutely. They're almost a foolproof strategy when it comes to that sort of thing. Speaking of foolproof, you were talking about rust proofing last week because all of a sudden, just 1 week into their sponsorship tenure with us, ABS is not the new kid on the block anymore.
No, how about that? The old reliable. ABS Auto Solutions, they've got more than 90 years of combined experience, right, Brian, in the automotive industry. Specifically, they specialize in bed liners, rust proofing, truck accessories. They have full package rust proofing on all kinds of vehicles. So they talk about trucks and bed liners and stuff, but if you have something other than, they can absolutely go through and do their rust proofing, use their rust proofing skills.
And the coolest part is, if you mention that you heard it here, as Dave stumbles all over the words, but if you mention that you heard something about ABS here, mention this ad, and you get an extra discount as well. That's always a great thing.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. You get the discount on the full rust proofing package. So again, you don't have to have a truck to use them. But if you do, and it could be a big truck, it could be a big Ford F450 with the dualies, or it could be a little Ford Maverick or a Hyundai Santa Cruz that you can purchase from one of our other sponsors, or a Tacoma from one of our other sponsors. And you can take it to ABS and they can put in a bed liner when one of the spray-in bed liners, Brian, when you own a truck up here, and if you're going to use it like a truck, and you're dropping in lumber, or you're dropping in cement blocks, the thing you need is a bed liner. So buy your Tacoma, buy your Santa Cruz from our sponsors, bring it up to ABS, have them put a new bed liner in, and you're good to go.
Intertwining sponsors, we always love that. So shout out to Ferguson in their debut here on the show. Shout out to ABS, of course. Dave, you mentioned multiple times in that dissertation other sponsors. Let's give them all love right now.
Absolutely. We'll start with the OG Arola Architecture Studio, Hoops Brewing, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Advantage Implement Screen Printing, the aforementioned Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, Assisted Living Locators. You can reach them at www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Mount Royal Bottle Shop. And the Blackwoods Group. Goodness gracious, Brian, it's going to be a morning. And the Blackwoods Group, their locations, including the location on London Road, Tavern on the Hill up by the schools, and their locations in Two Harbors and in Proctor. And I sold somebody to go to their Proctor location the other day. Well, both of us did. Yeah. I had a friend that is part of a conference, and they said, geez, Dave, we need to go to a place. And it was last minute, right? Last minute.
Yeah, you called me and said, what would you do
tonight?
And we brainstormed together. Yeah. I said, how much time you got? You said about an hour?
Yeah. And so we talked about all kinds of different places, and we both kind of head slapped and said, hold on, you can go to the Proctor location, have the event center with the hotel and the best restaurant in town. Why wouldn't you go and use their event center space? So, I mean, it's been a really interesting and fun week to interact with the sponsors.
Absolutely, it has. Our sponsorship family continues to grow. Tell you what, they got the first 8 minutes of the show as a result, but nothing wrong with our sponsorship family exceeding our expectations. I think we're absolutely amazed by how big that has gotten over the years.
And you got to use them.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
and we do.
We do. And so if you're listening to the show, you like the show, and you're looking to purchase something, even if you don't end up buying it there because you've got a plan someplace else, go to the sponsors and let them prove to you how good they are. Maybe you change your mind because you've gone someplace you haven't gone before.
So again, we are very thankful for all of those sponsors. And once again, in my opinion, and maybe this is because I didn't necessarily have great expectations, but our sponsorship family, the size of it has certainly exceeded the expectations that I had. Dave, I mentioned great expectations. Do you remember covering that in school?
I do.
So do I. I was thinking about it today, and I was like, I remember Pip. I remember Miss Havisham. I remember doing very well. In fact, so well in the Great Expectations unit, I think it was my freshman year of high school English, that my English teacher mailed something home to me and my parents, gushing over how well I did. Here's the moral of the story that she didn't know, though. I was grounded from bad grades the grade period before, so I had no choice than to be nose deep in the book, Great Expectations, and obviously it registered and I did well, but we're going to talk about great expectations and perhaps not so great expectations today because we talked about the Harbor Monsters being in a title game. That has great expectations to it. Team USA on both genders of basketball is going to be in gold medal games. That has great expectations to it. The Twins may have increased their expectations after last night when they may have shrunk with news yesterday afternoon. It was Best of times, worst of times to go Dickens on it.
Isn't that
for the Twins
right there?
That's exactly right.
Oh,
look
I
at
went
you!
to English class.
Look at you! You've already pulled off Great Expectations and Tale of Two Cities. You're so well read, Dave Cook. But then you've got the opposite end of the spectrum, where again, if you heard the show before us, the Vikings should have 0 or less than 0 expectations.
Wow!
But we don't know, and it's preseason game 1 this afternoon right here on these airwaves too.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that. It's really. Our conversation next is going to be great because it is such. This season fits so well into our opening topic.
It does. In our opening topic today, we're going to throw out this part of it. Usually, when we talk about expectations, we talk about, well, how did it end up? Were you surprised? Were you disappointed? The way things ended up. How did you feel? We're not going to factor in how it ended up. We're just going to talk about in the moment or prior to the moment. What did you feel? So. When did you have the lowest expectations for a given team? When did you have the highest expectations for a given team? Because again, when I look at the Twins, Team USA, Harbor Monsters, my expectations are pretty darn high. With the Vikings, I'm not Dave Sinekin low, but I don't know what to think. So I think this opening topic today is fun. And maybe because of that, we start with the Vikings.
I wonder what you'd say if you were Dave Sinekin and you asked him that question about the Packers. Like I've never been down on them, Brian. I appreciate that. I know that every single year I have great expectations.
Yeah, all I know is the 72 Dolphins are lucky that we choose to lose one each year. But anyway, this is the Northland Sports page,
right.
Not the roast of Dave Sinekin.
Do you want the low or the high?
I've always let you be Will Steger on these expeditions. You get to determine that again today.
All right, I think
and we've only got 15 minutes till our first guest.
I think the one is easiest for me, and that is my highest expectations for the Minnesota Vikings ever was 1999.
Okay. After the 98.
Yep, because the 98 team were rolling it back. It just wrecked the league in 98. We had a better backup plan. We weren't going to end up with, somebody couldn't throw. If Cunningham went down, we had Jeff George, who had all kinds of issues, but the one thing he could do is throw the deep ball. And so, no, I was gassed up for 99.
I think that's a good one. In fact, it was quite high on my list. So I'm going to go a different route just to have a different route because as much as I know time is tough for us, I don't think me saying yep is going to be great radio. So I'm going to be close to that. I think my highest expectations is 2009. And again, I know we said we weren't going to talk about how it ended up. We know how it ended up. But this team, Brett Favre said it. A lot of pieces were in place. Yep. And they didn't have a good quarterback. 2008 was not a bad year, but Mr. Jackson, may he rest in peace, just couldn't get him over the proverbial hump. No. You get Brett Favre, especially if you listen to Packer fans talk about this guy being a messiah, and you think this is the missing link. I remember not knowing how to feel because as a Viking fan, your emotion was to not like this guy because he was basically the chief rival, and now he was on your team. But my expectations, I was a season ticket holder for 2 years. It was the 2 years we had Favre. Those are coincidental, but it also kind of drove the bus.
It is interesting for those that weren't like into it at that point. Going into the season, it was like, okay, so we're going to be a little bit better. We've got this, we got AP, he's the real McCoy.
But what is T-Jack going to be able to do? We didn't know.
Yep, but so it was not, you weren't expecting the worst, but there was a malaise, right? Yeah. It was like, oh, great, we've got all this talent.
Or there was a feeling of 10-6 was a ceiling back then.
And then when the helicopter was coming.
Was that on your phone there?
It must be.
Dave's got a new podcast fired up or something, but please continue.
So weird.
I don't want to silence you, but you silenced your phone.
I'm sorry, that was so weird. I don't know what that was actually.
I started looking at the radio board and going, what button did I push wrong now?
Anyways, and then you heard about the helicopters in Mississippi, right? And you heard about the black cars coming, and the news stations were flying around the airport trying to catch that airplane coming in because they didn't just say, hey, guess Favre is down the block here. We're going to have him come in. Like it was a whole. Here's the plane ID. We looked on the FAA website. That ID of the Wilf's plane is now flying over Independence, Missouri. Like the whole thing turned into this giant spectacle. You raised the interest in the Vikings from about 30 to about 90 in 4 hours, 8 hours.
So again, my highest expectations is 09. I could have said 2010, which would have made sense because it would have aligned with your 99 take that we were so close. Yep. Let's just run it back and do it again. The kind of thing that I don't appreciate, though, is the unfinished business mantra. That's my chief concern with the Minnesota Timberwolves right now. Yeah. They just had a fantastic season. They just think it's going to tip off and they're going to be right back in the Western Conference Finals. If you take that mentality, you are screwed.
Right.
So I didn't bring that up on purpose. When did you have the lowest expectations for the Vikes? Because this team, to me, has always been deemed competitive whether accurate or not, but then we know that they've consistently fallen short.
So I think my answer to that is 85, because Steckel was the coach for, I think I have this right. Steckel was the coach for 84. It might be 83 and 84. I think it's 84 and 85. Steckel drove that Vikings team that wasn't all that talented as far into the ground as that franchise had ever been. And so Grant came back, and that was the only thing that felt good. The coach is back. Maybe we'll be 7 wins, and we were. He ended up bringing them 500, but that tells you how good of a coach Grant was, because that team had no business being around 7 or 500. But the other season that my expectations were pretty low was for that 87 team. Now the 87 team, that's when we had a big influx of the players from the USFL, because that team during that time, like I said, that 83 team, 84 team, 85 teams, they're bereft of talent. And when we got the influx of Zimmerman and we got the influx of Anthony Carter and some of the other players, it was still, well, show me something. Sure enough.
That's fair. So my lowest was 2013. And the interesting part of this is you would have thought if you feel that crescendos are a real thing in sports, the Vikings would have been on an upswing because they won double-digit games in 12. They made the playoffs. I think we knew it was smoke and mirrors, fool's gold, whatever cliche you want to bring, because Christian Ponder was okay.
Right.
But there was never the feeling like there was with Teddy Bridgewater that Christian Ponder is on the right trajectory and here we go. Let's be honest. Ponder had good moments, but the 2012 playoff berth was because Adrian Peterson was otherworldly.
Yep.
And I think we realized that if he's not otherworldly again, this can't be repeated. Peterson had a great season, but not to the same level. I'm not blaming him. I'm literally blaming everybody else. And I think it was 2013 that they went 5-10-1.
Yeah, that was the year that cost Leslie his job, right?
Right.
The thing about Ponder, and specifically Bridgewater, but we're seeing out of McCarthy, I think, as well, is Ponder had no leadership skills. Like, I don't know if that's because Chile burned it out of him or what the deal was, but he never presented himself as a leader. He always was a passenger who could help talent around him. Well, neither Bridgewater, who never felt like a passenger, and JJ doesn't feel like a passenger either. He feels like he's driving the bus. He knows what he needs to get accomplished to play, and he's pursuing that. And so I agree. That was a rough season.
It was. So how about the Minnesota Twins? Because their season this year started very rough, and then all of a sudden at the end of play last night, they enter today a game and a half back in the division, and really 3 games back from having the best record in the American League. And if you get the emotional barometer of Twins fans, I don't think most of them want to believe that. But let's go historically. Highest expectations first.
1992.
After the 91 championship
91,
win.
And the thing is we replaced Jack Morris, who left, with another 20-game lefty in John Smiley, who 20-game winner, pitched great for us. But it just the magic, like you said, running it back is tough sometimes. That 92 team was still really good, like really good, but the magic was gone. The winning a game you needed in the bottom of the 8th and having your closer come in and slam the door, those didn't happen in 92.
Well, and 92, that was the Aggie era.
Yep.
It's the 88 one for me that is of the similar ilk. You won it in 87, and you kind of hope that you could just lather, rinse, repeat. But I'm going to give you kind of a strange answer because I honestly think that the highest expectations that I had, can I just say this year, if you factor before the poverty articles about the TV deal and whatnot, I mean, they're getting a lot of the right things done, and they got the playoff jinx behind him. But then you got Sonny Gray walking away, which I was okay with, right or wrong. There were times where you look at the eye test and Sonny Gray wasn't it for me, but you look at the stats and then he was, and you look at the way this rotation has struggled at times and you go, yeah, you could use a Sonny Gray right now. But my expectations were through the roof this year. Then you got off to that 7-13 start and you went, what is this? I'm trying cautiously not to bring my expectations back to through the roof again.
One of the surprising years, for me anyway, was the year after the Bomba Squad. You were in the shortened season. The Bomba Squad went crazy, right? So you're expecting that to follow up.
Well, the problem is they didn't keep that group together long enough.
Right. But their style of play left too much to be desired for a long period of time. But the excitement was there, and then they just weren't that team.
What's your lowest expectation one? Because there's some easy ones here that I don't want to take, because you could say 87 because the only person that believed that they were going to bring a championship to Minnesota, said it on Fan Appreciation Day in 86, was Burt Blyleven. You can say 91 because it's worst to first, and how could you have expectations? coming off of 1990. If you're a knowledgeable and old enough Twins fan, you could say every year in the 90s after basically 92, because the squad was laughable for a good chunk of time. Oddly enough, and again, I'm going really outside the box here, my lowest expectations was the COVID year.
Yeah.
Because it was a shortened season. You don't know who did what during a pandemic to stay in shape and really be baseball ready. You didn't know what baseball was going to do in terms of how are they going to play this, and you're only playing your division because travel is limited. You just didn't know who's going to be affected by playing in front of an empty stadium, who's not. So I had no expectations because I was just happy to be able to watch baseball. That might be low-hanging fruit, but it resonates for me.
Now I'm going to try to speak to people my age.
Okay.
Sometimes it's tough.
The Oregon Trail. Oh, sorry.
Right. Well, maybe before then.
I was going to say, watch your dysentery.
Are we doing the actual Oregon Trail, or are we doing the game?
That depends.
Because I'm beating the game here.
Right.
All right.
I don't know if you ever had experience on the actual ones. So go ahead.
If you're a Twins fan who liked the Twins from about 1975 to about 1985, it was the same. We were the Kansas City Royals or the Chicago White Sox of today.
You were always going to be in fourth.
For a decade. We hoped for 500, right? We couldn't pitch one year. We couldn't hit one year. We'd get a good hitter. We'd trade him. We'd get another good hitter. He'd go in free agency. And so it was always this malaise. But 1984, the year after we lost 102 games and we had no direction. We brought the kids up that ended up winning it in 1987, but they weren't ready. And so
Wouldn't that be 83 then? Because wasn't 82 the terrible loss? Wasn't that the 100 plus?
Like I said, sometimes during that season when every season seemed the same. Or
they meshed together for you? Go ahead.
So, yes, coming into that season, there was no reason to have any expectations. Like they were going to be awful because they'd been awful for a decade beforehand, and they were really awful last year. And then they turned into a 500 ball team. They won late. And think about it. I remember they became a 500 ball team. That's how bad they were in the previous 4 or 5 years before then. And this is a team that turned into 87, but that absolute least expectation was a year after they won or lost 102.
All right, so we'll close with the Wolves and then the Wild. And for me, I wanted to do these two together because there's so much of a similar thought process here for me, because the lowest expectations that I had for each of these two teams would be their second year of existence. Because with the first one, you're excited because, hey, we got a pro basketball team, and I'm 10 years old in 1989, and in my lifetime, Minnesota has never had a professional basketball team. So that first year, you are fired up until they don't do very well. And reality hits that you are an expansion team, and you're not expected, and you could argue not even supposed to do very well. So no disrespect to your icon that is Bill Musselman. He did a great job. But the expectations were, wait a minute, 30 wins in this scenario is a great season. 30 wins in an 82-game season, you are going nowhere. Same type of thing with the Wild. I know we had Jacques Lemaire. I know we had professional hockey back. I know a lot of us went through North Stars withdrawal, and I get that. And it was going to be super exciting until you realize that mediocre was considered pretty darn good by way of expectation, which is exactly what we're covering. So my two lows for the Wolves and Wild, and I'll let you go ahead and do yours, would be year two, because reality, okay, we got it, but they're not supposed to do anything.
So year two, that's the year we got sold that Mussy had this plan. He was going to get a bunch of hard workers. He was going to outwork everybody. He had a plan to win. So I actually didn't feel that way. When I felt that way was the year after they had that mini run with Adelman. Then his wife got sick.
And if people could just get healthy, they'd be good.
Yep. And then Ricky blew his knee, and Love broke his hands doing knuckle push-ups. And it just seemed like this whole crew there's just this wrong. The North Star Wild one is funny, and it's what happened this morning. I was looking some things up.
This is funny. Dave was fact-checking himself, and we had a good laugh. Go ahead.
Yep, because that 90, it turns out, Brian, by the way, that 91-92 team was pretty good. Or you know what I mean. So I went and said the next year's the year we won. Look, Brian. So I got the North Stars career thing. I said, well, He's
pointing out to me the history of the Stars, and this is important. He's saying, look how good they were in 93, 94. And I said, Dave, weren't they gone?
Yep. And then I said, oh, dang. Well, this is the year that I was least excited about being a North Star fan now, because they're gone.
Because it was really hard to beat one.
Even though they won the whole thing, this is pretty hard. Imagine Minnesota fan. You have to imagine being a Minnesota Wild North Star fan, having the first year they're gone, the team that you used to love goes to the Stanley Cup.
And the only way I was okay with that is because they had local flavor galore. You look at that Stanley Cup winning team, Derek Plant was on it, Jamie Langenbrunner was on it, Brett Hull was on it. So there was a way to soften the blow for a lot of us. Or if we're in the we didn't need him camp, it made it even harder.
I get it harder for me.
I get that.
Yeah.
So highest expectation, I'm going to be exactly what I don't like. But with the Wolves, I don't know how you could avoid this. They go to the Western Conference Finals with the seasoned veterans like Cassell and Sprewell. KG is absolutely prime KG. Sam Cassell got hurt. That's the only reason this team didn't make the finals or potentially win it. Let's just put the band back together and let's go. And they did. And that band was way off key that entire season. Flip lost his job. That became a train wreck. Yeah, we know that Sprewell might be why, but I'm not concerned with how it panned out. I'm just saying, couldn't wait for the Wolves to get back on the court that season.
Well, and that season really started the next decade of Joe Smith and all that stuff where nothing worked well at all.
Right.
No, I agree. I think that's the year that came with great expectations if you don't want to count this year. Because the upcoming year
24-25, including a Dallas matchup on Christmas.
But right. Could that be overplayed a little bit too much?
Well, I don't know. I'm good with it. It'll be a break from Christmas festivities, and I'm always okay with that.
So the other year that came to mind was the year they traded for Jimmy. Because we had a really good group of kids. We made a choice that Levine was the guy we could trade. We kept the other two. Jimmy Butler was going to make these young Wolves into and we had
not to be confused with the Wilfs.
We had a good group of kids that needed a leader. Well, we just brought the wrong guy in. But you didn't know that during the season. You found that out after the season. So that season, going into that season, it was pretty exciting, and he did get us to the playoffs.
And my highest expectations for the Wild, again, I didn't factor the North Stars in because I just don't do that. Yes, I was a North Stars fan. Yes, I attended games. Yes, I followed them, but I've just chosen to move on, so I only look at the Wild. The highest expectations could have been, hey, they made the Western Conference Finals run with their team, and J.S. Jaguar shut you down, and then they changed the rules with goalie equipment, etc. But that still fell into that very early expansion era where you had to look at that and say, we had the horseshoe that season, as you like to put it. This probably won't happen again. I don't think there's any way that the expectations couldn't have been higher than right after that 4th of July where you had Suter and Parisi.
Yeah.
We've got the best available free agents at 2 marquee positions. You get any goaltending at all, and you're going to be just fine. They were just fine. That's it.
And that's the legacy of those 2 free agents. Yeah, they were all right. We were all right during that period of time.
They were more than serviceable.
Yeah. So
I agree. But they could have easily gotten the Kirk Cousins treatment. Look how much we paid him. Look what we got.
It's interesting though, Brian. I follow the Wild, right? But then it's never been the same passion as it was with the North Stars. So it is hard because those first 10 years are just one big glump of years.
Do you ever think about that though? I just said something that opens Pandora's box way too late in a segment. Do you ever think of the fact that Parisi and Suter in hockey worlds were paid like Kirk Cousins was and had the same mediocre nature to them?
Yeah, kind of.
Ever a doubt were the state of hockey? I don't remember the scrutiny for those two compared to Kirk.
Oh, I think you weren't paying attention enough.
Or the NFL is just king.
Yeah, I think because I think Suter wore that for the last 7-8 years of his career here, or 5-6 years of his career.
It's been interesting. Minnesota sports has been a lot of wins, there's been a lot of losses, but unfortunately earlier this week, UMD Bulldogs had a bigger loss than any game could ever be.
Yeah, no, it was quite the deal when we were talking on Thursday, and then all of a sudden the news flashed across the phones.
Absolutely. So we're going to go to one of the best Bulldog players to play for Coach Sertich. Bill Watson is next as we remember Mike. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals.
That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch. And the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. Chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
And we're back on the Northland Sports page. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. It is a sad, sad week for UMD Bulldog fans. The leader of the band, I know there was success before him. There's been success after him. But I look at Mike Sertich as he is UMD hockey.
And beyond UMD hockey. I was at a Bantam State AA tournament, and he gave the keynote at the breakfast or the dinner the day before, and just his way, right? Just being able to talk to kids, being able to talk hockey in a way that wasn't ziz boom bah and rah rah, but but it was still fun, and you left going, you know what, not only did I learn something, but wow, that guy I'd follow.
No doubt about it. So decades of success, decades of players impacted. We want to go to one of them. We teased it out of the break, and we've got him now by phone. Bill Watson is with us. Bill, first of all, good morning. Thanks for being with us. But the first thing you told me earlier this week is, for Coach, I'll do anything. You tell me when you want me on, and we'll go from there. So this guy meant more than the world to you, and I want to say that I'm sorry for your loss to all of us here in Duluth, of course.
Yeah, Brian, it's a tough day, a tough week for us in the Bulldog Nation. But it's tough in the way that you knew it was coming, but it's still a sad moment when it happens. And we're going to miss Coach. Coach had a massive impact on a lot of Bulldogs over his 18 years, and even more so because he played here, and he was a fabric of our not just our teams, but of the community as well. And I think a lot of people have reached out and passed on their condolences to hopefully not just his family, but across the board to everybody that he impacted in the region and throughout the hockey world.
I think one thing a lot of people don't know, and you, of course, do, is what was it like to play for Sertich? Because when you talk to him, in a hallway or in an arena, and he's not behind a bench, he's one of the most, affable guys you're ever going to meet. Just kindness oozing out of that man. But what was he like as a coach? Was he tough? Was he compassionate? Was he all of the above? What was he like?
It's weird because, when we got here, my freshman class, that was his first year. So, we didn't know any difference. He was an assistant coach under Gus Hendrickson for 7 years, but immediately Mike changed the dynamics. He changed accountability. He changed the training. He changed everything about what we were doing. And I think that's what made us an amazing success. I think that he just brought a new look to the program. And I think it's one of the reasons we had just so much success. And I think he trusted us and he believed in us. But he was intense, trust me. Those practices, I don't miss those. I don't even like thinking about them. I mean, we could sweep a team on the road somewhere. We'd come home, get a day off Sunday, and Monday we'd practice for an hour. He'd get us back out there, and he'd skate us into the concrete. And he always tried to make it sound like it was, to make us better. And it was, trust me, it was. It made us a better team. We were a better third period team because we were in better condition. But he wanted to keep a thumb down on us and make us accountable. And, sometimes, at the college level, you have to do that. And I think, but he was also kind of new wave in some of the stuff he was doing in regards to overtraining. He was a big disciple of Herb Brooks, what Herb Brooks had done with the 1980 Olympic team. So, no, it was all good stuff. So it was unique to play for him. I was very fortunate that I had the chance to play for him. So, he was a different guy that you met, Brian, in the hallway than he was in the locker room. I can tell you that.
And that's interesting that you say that, because I remember going to elementary school with his daughter, Lori, and, parents come to pick up their kids, and Mike Sertich would be in the hallway, and I'm walking around with my jacket on with Bill Watson's button on my jacket, Brian Johnson, Skeeter Moore's button on my jacket, and, Mike is the friendliest guy out there, but he's an icon, Dave Cook. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about, Bill. The one thing that hearing Coach Sertich talk in the later days was how he believed in instinct and free flowing. And, the years right before he took over UMD, it was a physical grind-em-up hockey. And he brought in an entire different, like you said, a culture, but an entire different way of playing. He seemed to bring in smart and instinctful hockey players, just kind of trust him.
Well, I think a big part of that, he freed a lot of the players up to play the way they could play. You know what I mean? And I was a massive benefactor of that. You know what I mean? So no, it worked out. It couldn't have worked out better for me. It worked out perfect. I mean, I had a coach that really didn't put any handcuffs on me and let me go do the things that I could do. But there was many others that were just like me. So.
Bill, what's it been like after playing for him, having the relationship with Mike? Because both of you guys have been around the UMD men's hockey program for years and years. We talk about playing for him. We talk about that toughness. But then when you're not a player of his anymore and you're an alum in the program and you had an NHL career and all that good stuff, but you and Mike stayed in touch. What was that relationship like as you both got further into adulthood, per se?
Yeah, he was always, he's one of those coaches. He was always there because I always came back here with my wife, Molly, and the kids and all that. So he was always around. He was a big part of not just mine, but a lot of our alumni. And, it's unique to talk about it now because you can look back on what an impact he had, again, not just on the hockey side, but he did care for, you as a player away from the game. And there were some things in life that happened to you, but he was always there.
He was always there, and I think that's why it's such a shock that he's not anymore. Because, Dave, you and I were just talking about, we were together Thursday night putting together our high school broadcast schedule for 24-25, and we were talking about this game, and this game, and my phone went off, and I looked at it, and I said, oh, my goodness, Mike Sertich passed away. And I'm not going to say that we had a moment of silence, but I think we had a moment of stunned silence before recollecting ourselves and continuing the evening.
I think that there's a thing about not realizing, not seeing people age, right? Because you're not with them all the time, and then you read they pass, and it really is a shock to the system. Bill, you talked about how Sertich impacted your hockey career, but you were there, and you were captain, and you took care of a lot of guys. Who do you think he impacted the greatest? Was there a player that you said, man, if he wasn't here, he'd be struggling?
I think because of the transition of when he took over, because he inherited Gus's team, I'm not so much there was an impact, but having Tommy Curvers there with him when he took the program over and Danny Fishback, I think really, really, helped Mike out as much as anything. We were all freshmen, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were just following the people in front of us, but we were fortunate because we had tremendous leaders, and those two in particular that had a massive impact on my freshman class. And I could see how they worked with Mike. And again, it just, the end result was, we ended up really, the culture that we built and Mike built, obviously passed on to us. We had tremendous success.
Remembering the great Mike Sertich with hockey icon Bill Watson as well. And Bill, we talk about all the different facets of Mike Sertich, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here because in today's world of sports, we see all these different scenarios where players and coaches are mic'd up. And obviously when Mike Sertich was behind a bench, we didn't get that. Do you have any in-game moments that stand out that you can share on the radio, keep in mind, but do you have any in-game moments that now are humorous all these years later?
What's funny is Mike was not I don't remember him being the guy that cursed refs or anything like that. As a matter of fact, he would tell us sometimes, to shut the up and just say, let's just play the game because the refs have no impact on the game. They really don't. But I wish I could remember some of the one-liners he had for certain players, not just our players, but players on the other team. It was comical when we were on the bench together. But I mean, it's funny. Like you played for you played for that guy. We played in so many high
We're having a little cell phone difficulties now, Bill. I'm not sure if you can still hear us or not, but it started cutting out a little bit. Can you hear us okay?
No, I can hear you fine. I was just in a lull. I can hear you fine. No, it's one of those things where he was not overly flamboyant on the bench that I can remember, but his wit was so good and his sense of humor was absolutely phenomenal. And, it was just one of those things because we played in so many intense games, down the stretch. And a lot of stuff we were doing was the first for the program. They had never won a league championship. They'd never won a playoff championship. They'd never been in the NCAA. So everything was a first for us. And I loved the way, in a lot of ways, how he handled it, because it was what else were we going to do? We're the first to do it. Let's just go do it. And again, his sense of humor and his wit really came through.
Absolutely. He provided so many great memories for the program, both yourself and, of course, Mike Sertich. Again, I've said success before him, success after him, but Mike Sertich, to me, will always be Bulldog hockey. Speaking of Bulldog hockey, when the passing news came about Thursday night, you were the first guy that Dave and I reached out to. We wanted to have this conversation. But you mentioned, hey, I can do it, but I'm going to be driving to a hockey reunion at the moment. We know you're driving right now. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit somber, but is it a nice feeling to be able to exchange that many stories this weekend now, too?
Family, pretty much.
Might be true. Well, yeah, exactly. So I'm in a car with Craig Karakis, Mark Christian. It's a generational thing that we have built here at the Bulldog Nation. So it's going to be nice to be with all the guys today. Be good memories. Yep.
Absolutely. And I think you said it best, even when, some of the warning signs are there that this might be coming, you're never prepared for it because it was genuinely shocking on Thursday night.
Yeah, no, you hit it right in the head. We were all, we kind of knew this day was coming, but it's a different world that happens. You know what I mean? You go back to I think all the memories you have with your teammates and all those people around the program when you played, and that's not just me, that's a generation, that's 18 years that he was here. And like I said before, I'm not trying to dish on the teams and stuff before, but when Mike took over, it changed the program. And, Tommy was a big part of that. Danny Fishback was a big part of that. Those guys, they changed the program in a different direction. And, I think that's a big part of where we're at today.
Brian, I think that we wanted some stories, right? I think if we were in the car with Billy, we'd get plenty of stories with the group that's there with him. We probably couldn't put any of them on the air.
Right, and that's part of what I was going to ask, not to break FCC rules and regulations, but you mentioned there are generations of players impacted by Mike Sertich. When you hear stories from guys that played after you, because when he got there, that's basically when you got there.
When he matured.
When you hear from guys that played after you, is it consistent, or was there something about Mike Sertich personality-wise as a coach that changed?
Oh, no, I don't think much changed about Mike. No, Mike was always the same person. Mike had a different sense of humor. Listen, I'm going to be totally honest. It wasn't like I had the greatest relationship with him as a player. I was probably not the easiest player to coach, and it was contentious at times. But we had to do, we had a level of trust where Friday nights and Saturday nights I usually would show up, and he'd kind of give me a little bit of room after that, and trust me. But I think he had that relationship with a lot of players. He challenged players. He made them accountable. And I hate to say that, some people don't like that, but it's okay. I think at the end of the day, he wanted you to be the best you could be. That was it. Simple as that. And I tell you, the only thing that ever pissed me off is in my career is we'd get in the third period and we would just be absolutely drilling teams 8-1, 7-2. And sure enough, my line wouldn't go out for the last 8 to 10 minutes. I gave him so much grief, after the years after that. I said, my God, I would have put up another 25, 30 points if he would have let me out there. Against these teams that were benders, I could have put a few more in.
Well, you just would have won the Hobey by a larger margin. We can go with that. But Billy, that story kind of segues great into my final question. Then I'll let you go and enjoy your weekend and say hi to those guys for me as well. Craig's a wonderful guy, and I love chatting with him too. Yep. But so my last question is this. You talked about, the relationship player to coach isn't always, a bed of roses. But when I texted you Thursday night, the first thing you said was, for coach, I'll do anything. So in the end, describe your relationship with Mike, because it sounds like it ended as a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it did. Along the way, I think we got out in the open, some of the things that we maybe had disagreements on and stuff like that. And we had a lot of talks in that, but I really enjoyed the last probably 10 years, in particular, a couple of trips last year. Craig and I went up and saw him at the Hockey Hall of Fame, and we saw, Guy Goslin, Scott Salmon. Matter of fact, I shared a picture with those guys today. Life is so fleeting. It's so short. You have to, you have to live. And that's one thing that's the message I always got from Mike was, you got to live your life. And I'll just say this to you, one of the greatest quotes he ever had, because he had so many, but, we'd lost in overtime to Bowling Green 4 overtimes. It was just absolutely bitter, and that's a game I never thought I'd ever lose or my team would ever lose. And I'll never forget, we got done with all the interviews, this, that, we're in the locker room, and Sert comes in, and he knew, obviously, we were down. And he just said to us, he goes, listen, you know what? The sun's going to come up tomorrow morning again. I'll tell you, I've taken that with me the rest of my life, and I think it's a message that if people think about Mike, that was Mike in essence. He could take a really, really down moment and put it in perspective and make you think a little bit differently, and I think that's something that I'll always cherish.
Absolutely, and I feel like you've done that for us today. Obviously, the circumstances are difficult, but everybody has great memories of Mike Sertich. Yep. Thank you for the time. I always appreciate conversations with you. Let's do it again under better circumstances, but have some fun remembering Mike this weekend. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Bill.
Sure. Yep, take care. Yep.
Absolutely. That's our guy, Bill Watson. That guy spoke so eloquently about a guy that I think we all remember and love.
Oh, 100%. And the thing is the further away you can get from somebody and you've had all the success that UMD has had, I think Bill said it right. We forget that Coach Sertich is where this whole string of success started. He took Gus's team and he just amped it up, and like Bill said, he trusted his players to do what they wanted. But at that Bantam tournament, he did say to those kids, he said, listen, this is a game of touch and feel. He goes, and You only get that by practicing and playing and having fun and not simply grinding through drills. So when you got time, go to the rink and you listen to the guys, list off the guys that played here that went to the NHL or have impacted hockey. It's crazy.
Absolutely. So thank you, Bill Watson, for a difficult conversation. You could hear the emotion in his voice at times, and that's to be expected because Mike Sertich, thank you for the memories. Rest in peace. We'll be right back.
Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One with pico and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other with bacon and avocado ranch. Chicken expert since 1990. Taco expert since now. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
And welcome back to the Northland Sports Page. Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook, lost in all the sports madness this weekend with the Vikings preseason coming your way later. And, of course, the Harbor Monsters, Arena Mania, the championship will be heard on these airwaves as well. It's also Blues Fest weekend, so if you haven't noticed already, most of our music, not all, but most of our music will at least have the word blue in it, if not be a little bluesy as well.
You know what's crazy, Brian? Do you remember when Blues Fest was the first and largest event down at Bayfront? It was the whole... it was like grandma's. We kind of stopped because Blues Fest was coming. And it's really cool. And a tip of the hat to the deck crew and Visit Duluth and all the different groups that have been around over the years, that this is still a pinnacle, top of the crown event. But so many events now, that have copied Blues Fest, how they won and how they've been successful.
So again, speaking of being successful, weekends like this are great for area businesses. We're grateful for a lot of them who sponsor us.
Yeah, let's start with Blackwoods Group. Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road. Tavern on the Hill, also the locations in Two Harbors and in Proctor. Ferguson Bath and Kitchen, where you go get some quality, you get your quality fixtures for your, if you're starting from new and you have a new build or you're doing whatnot. You can go to Mount Royal Bottle Shop. You can hit Krause Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer. Assisted Living Locators. That's www.assistedlivinglocators.org/Duluth. Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance. Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai. Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing. Comfort Systems of Duluth. Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies. Hoops Brewing. ABS Auto Solutions and Arola Architecture Studio.
So we appreciate all of our great sponsors for what they do and what they bring us. We hope that they have successful weekends, but success all the time. But let's start with that as we go to Dave Hoops of Hoops Brewing. Dave, first of all, good morning. And we know how much Blues Fest has meant to the city over the years. What does it mean having a business down at Canal Park? Do you expect an influx this weekend?
Well, good morning, guys. Really, really good segment there with about Sertich. I really enjoyed that. But anything that happens in Canal Park and especially at Bayfront is really good for. At Bayfront is great for Canal Park. Now, Blues Fest has over the years, as Dave mentioned, solidified a little bit, and much of the vending is done on site, and it's an all-day type thing. So, yeah, we definitely get a little influx of pre and post from the hotels that the folks are staying at and stuff like that. And we can hear it, which is nice.
So the music is one thing, but I know you're also a lover of sports. You're the sports brewer, and that's why you're here with us. How excited are you just for today? Because we've got men's basketball and a gold medal game for Team USA. We've got Vikings preseason in a few hours. And then, of course, for Duluth itself, we talk about the Vikings not having the ultimate football championship, but Duluth could if the Harbor Monsters get a W this evening. It's a pretty exciting Saturday. Something that I guess as I look at the sports calendar most years, I'm not circling August 10th as a big deal time of year, but here we are. And then, of course, Twins Guardians as well.
Yeah, it's outstanding. And of course, right now we have the U.S. soccer women's team on in the gold medal final, and they've been tight. They're dominant. They might win, but they've had all these close matches. But we'll have every one of those things on. I've been saying all year how great the Twins are, yet we're hours away from being a half a game out.
I was going to say, you've got one guy who's agreed with you all along, and you're talking to him right now.
Yep, and we'll have everything on. The Harbor Monsters game, we'll be pouring the Harbor Monster Ale, and, of course, the Vikes and the U.S. This France-U.S. rivalry is growing, and remember the draft this year. France dominated the draft, plus that kid's fun to watch. It's going to be a really good day.
Yeah, this is the one time that I'll allow all the Timberwolves Bobos to cheer against Rudy Gobert a little bit. It's fine today, but after that, turn over that new leaf again.
Dave's right, though. That's French team is pretty good.
Yeah, they're pretty good. The only thing I look at, and I hate to get caught playing who beat who by what, France had some squeakers where the U.S. dominated. But again, if you really look at it on the men's basketball side, and you could argue, and we're going to hear from Nick Nurse in about 10 minutes, head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, for a fundraiser that he's doing in Minnesota. But we talked about Team USA basketball. You could argue that they shouldn't be in this game later today. Serbia had them on the ropes.
Yeah, 100%. And, the other thing that I wanted to point out is we talk about LeBron, and usually it's disparaging because of whatever, not the greatest.
Don't go too far with this. He'll come up later.
Yeah, he's had himself a tournament.
No doubt about it. And Dave, I know Dave Cook, you say that volleyball is the most underappreciated sport out there. Another gold medal opportunity for the U.S. in women's volleyball as well. It's been exciting. The Olympics have been exciting. It's hard to believe that closing ceremonies will be tomorrow as well. It's been fun. It's been memorable, but don't blink and it's suddenly gone. And that's kind of my beef with the Olympics. I hope some of these athletes that we kind of glommed onto during these 2 weeks don't quickly get in your rearview mirror. Remember how good they are, even when the Olympics aren't, right in front of you. But Dave Hoops, I think that's one of the things that I love most about your brewery. We just gave you a plethora of sports that can be checked out today, and people can partake in delicious beer and see it all in your establishment.
Right, 100%. But I also want to just add on to your Olympics comment. I've spent a fair amount of time in Paris lately due to Daisy, and it is a really nice city. They've showed well. They've done a beautiful job. Their athletes are third overall in medals, and there's going to be a little bit of letdown in this house from the Olympics. And then you mentioned watch the Diamond League. It's on NBC, it's on Peacock, and it's the same athletes competing professionally, year-round in track and field at least. So it's out there. But I think this has been a really good Olympics.
Yeah, I will tell you the track and field competition, but mainly the sprinting for me, which is ironic because it's something that I can never do. It's addicting to watch. It's very, very fun, and maybe it's because it moves quickly, and everything today in sports is about pace. But we're pacing ourselves to go to Dave Cook's fantastic questions for you and I once again. Dave Hoops, we know these are always life-altering. Dave Cook, what do you got?
All right, so the first question is going to be brewery-related, and it really just jumps off the question you asked him a minute ago. All these different festivals, different genres, different, messaging, different people, right? Dave, is there a vibe change, just the people that are coming through the door for each festival? I mean, you said we get a little bit of it, but does the brewery feel different when different festivals come through?
It does. And there's certain festivals like the one a couple weeks ago, All Pints, which is probably the most beautiful festival around. And it's always well attended, but talk about a different vibe. This festival was one of the first to allow the THC seltzer waters that some of the breweries are making. And the crowd was younger, 100%.
Oh, sure.
That's a big one. And then some of the older festivals are really, they're filling out with Gen Xers and stuff like that. We search out kind of rare beers and older beers and traditional beers, which of course I'm really guilty of making, mostly those. And that kind of festival is kind of fading a little bit. It's much more festivals that are attached to the Gen Z millennial kind of vibe, and then more extra stuff that people like to have. That's a big thing, and that's kind of the case in all walks of life, right?
Yep.
But you need to show a little bit more. Plus, it's not just all about drinking, and that has actually, I think, a really good thing that's changed as opposed to some of them being a little bit sloppy in the past.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, Brian, question 1. You ready?
Okay.
All right, I know this is going to hit for both you guys. I want to know who the greatest game show host of all time is. I'm going to give you some choices here. All right, so we got Pat Sajak, we got Alex Trebek, we got Chuck Woolery, we got Bob Barker, and we got The Field. We have other options for you guys.
Guys like Bob Eubanks and Richard Dawson and all them.
Gentlemen, it's the greatest game show host of all time.
Oof. This is tough because it's hard to say greatest of all time versus favorite, and are they the same? But Dave Hoops, this is why I love you get to go first.
I'm going with Jeopardy, Chuck. And then, of course, the old Will Ferrell send-offs on SNL are just classic with Sean Connery. But
so you're going with Alex Trebek.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, because that's interesting, because that's part of my debate. Because when you say greatest game show host of all time, does versatility have to be factored in? Because Chuck Woolery did a lot of different things. You look at, Bob Eubanks did a lot of different things. I continue to bring him up. But it's got to be Bob Barker, even though it was just The Price is Right, at least for my recognition. If somebody can Google or tell me if he did more. But for me, it's Bob Barker because as a kid born in 1979, growing up in the 80s and 90s, there are memes still out there today that if you were homesick from school, it was a bowl of soup, blankets on the couch, and watching The Price is Right. It's forever going to be Bob Barker, and Happy Gilmore movie fans, you know what I'm saying as well.
Well, and I think, and honestly, Trebek's a good one too. I think number 2 is Pat Sajak, only because he was there for
longevity,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, it's Bob Barker. I think that as well. All right, gentlemen, sports question. All right, you're down 6. You're on the 1-yard line. Who's your running back? Here's some choices: Roger Craig, Earl Campbell, Ironhead Hayward, Beast Mode, or somebody from the field.
Can I just say that I love that you put beast mode in it, because Pete Carroll should have done this in a Super Bowl, but Dave Hoops, go ahead.
That's where it came from. I saw that the other night.
I'm going to answer what I always answer, Mr. Sanders. I don't really care about
he's
it being
taking
on
the
the
field.
one
He's
and
going
him
with
being
Barry.
small.
Very good.
Yep.
Which is interesting because Wayne Fontes didn't do that often enough. Barry Sanders probably didn't score enough. He was the best running back in the game, and to me still is, but I remember playing in fantasy football leagues during his prime, and he was the 2nd or 3rd running back taken. So I'm torn between Earl Campbell and Ironhead Hayward, because you're on the 1, you're down 6, you just want to get in. You don't need somebody that's going to dance in the backfield or go high knees like Roger Craig would. You just bowl somebody over. So I guess because I'm factoring in talent and not just size, the edge goes to Earl Campbell, but the answer probably should be Ironhead Hayward. Go ahead.
It's funny because, looking at about 5 different places for information, this group is a group that was always in the top 5, but in the top 10, Jim Brown was always in the top 10.
Where's Leroy Horde in this?
Eric Dickerson was always in the top 10. Marcus Allen was always in the top 10, and John Riggins was always in the top 10. Number 11 on all of them, which is the funny part because I know you love this guy, Christian Okoye.
Yeah.
So
the
he
Nigerian
was always
nightmare.
the guy
Yes,
after
sir.
the top 10. I'm going with Earl because he was unstoppable.
Yeah.
But I think we undersell Roger Craig all the time.
We do. I think a lot of people forget he even played here. They just factor in the Niners part.
He was small, but he
It was
ran,
the high knees thing
yeah,
for me.
He ran
It's too
so
dancy
hard.
in the backfield.
Yep, he ran so hard.
One more?
Yeah, I actually do have one more. So here's the question. The Vikings have another great undrafted free agent class. And great for the undrafted free agents kind of means made the team, right? But I want to run besides John Randall because he's the greatest undrafted
I was going to say,
free
this
agent
is the
of
question.
all
We'll be
time.
done quick. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go with other 4 that
Okay.
have made a little bit of a name for themselves. You tell me which one's best. Marcus Sherrills, Robert Griffith, Adam Thielen, or Ivan Pace Jr.
Interesting, Dave Hoops. Again, I'm so thrilled that we kowtow to our guests and you get to go first.
Well, that's a really great question, but without if you had given me a list, I would have said Adam Thielen right off the top of, without. So I'm going to pick him, even though that's a great list. And of course, he's a hometown boy. That helps.
All right. If you take out 2 things, number 1 being a dropped interception in the Atlanta game because Gary Anderson gets the blame when this guy really could get his lion's share as well. And then you have to factor out his FCC be damned radio presence. Those are stories for a different time.
I don't swear, Brian.
But it's Robert Griffith for me. He was tremendous. He was the hallmark of that defensive backfield for a lot of years. Ivan Pace, I hope, gets to be on that list eventually, but
He's not.
you're looking at 1 season right now.
Yep.
Adam Thielen is tremendous, and I hope the Vikings find a way to bring him back. But Adam Thielen is tremendous at a position where the Vikings have been tremendous in a lot of ways, in a lot of eras. So Robert Griffith for me, but not by much.
See, for me, it's going to be Thielen because he's going to be a Ring of Honor guy.
Should be.
But
how much of that has to do with where he grew up?
a lot.
That's my question, especially the way the Ring of Honor is conducted these days.
So here's the question. Devin Hester's greatest punt returner of all time. Like, he made the Hall of Fame because he's a punt returner, right? Is it safe to say, or at least safe to consider, that the second best punt returner in Devin Hester's entire career, number 2, was Marcus Sherrills?
No, but I have to think of who it would be. It would be somebody like a Vi Sikahema or a Mel Gray or a Dante Hall.
Yeah.
Marcus Sherrills wasn't nationally known well enough to say that.
No, but he changed the way the Vikings do special teams. Like, he was, remember Bud Grant said, the only thing you got to do is catch a ball? Well, he did more than just that.
What about the Ravens kid who just passed away? Jacoby Jones was pretty good as well.
There's been a lot of good ones.
I think there's too many that when you bring them up, that's ahead of Sherrills too. So short answer, no.
So Marcus Sherrills is up there for me as well. Thielen's a Ring of Honor guy, which is the reason that I think he's different.
Speaking of short answer, no, I'm going to switch to short answer, yes. And that's my answer to the question when anybody says, hey, do you want to go to Hoops Brewing? The answer is yes. Dave, I owe you an apology For the first time, I missed bingo this past week because I worked hours at the day job that no human being should be asked to do. But there are a lot of fun things at the brewery. Run through them for us as we let you go with another great Saturday.
Well, thanks very much. Yep, we'll have another bingo coming up very soon, and we'll announce that. Next week, of course, is the big speed dating thing with Danny Hanger on Wednesday night. Cribbage remains a huge draw on Tuesday nights, and the Thursday night record spinning vinyl night has become really great with the good weather outside, and then, of course, the outdoor music on the Urban as well. And we've got a bunch of great beers. I just mentioned Harbor Monster Ale, but we just rolled out our Amber, which is a beer we made the first year we were open, number 22, really, really good. And then we just put a blueberry wheat into the tanks. Will be coming out next month as a anniversary beer for the Lift TV show with Bailey. So that's kind of a cool thing.
That sounds delicious. Plus, it's perfect. Talking blueberry on Blues Fest weekend. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy all the sports. I love talking to you, my friend. Never a bad conversation. We'll do it again next Saturday.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy the day.
Absolutely, you as well. That's our guy, Dave Hoops, one of our illustrious sponsors, Hoops Brewing. When we come back, a golden opportunity for Dave Cook and myself as we got a chance for the first time in the show history to talk to a current NBA coach, Philadelphia 76ers coach, Nick Nurse. He's going to be doing some fundraising in Minnesota, and he's going to tell us why. He also just returned from Paris. Should be a fun conversation. Coming your way with hour number 2. That's next.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.